Good morning. Good morning. I'm doing the broadcast myself today, so a little bit jerky sometimes, but I hope that you'll bear with me. Welcome to the King's Report News Hour for 16th year of Chungi, the the 10th month, and now I believe we're in the seventh day. Is it seventh day? I think by the heavenly calendar. Pretty sure that's right. Yes, seventh day by the heavenly calendar and the 10th month. And Tim Miller sitting in for the second king of Chandraguk. And let's go take our sojourn around the kingdom right now in Chongpyeong, Tennessee. 55 degrees, mostly cloudy. Breezy this morning with a couple of showers, otherwise variable cloudiness. High of 59 tonight, clear to partly cloudy and much colder. Low of 33. Yes. So if you're coming to the Thanksgiving event tomorrow, better dress up, better dress warmly. Father's hometown, Cheongju, North Pyongan province in what is today North Korea, mostly cloudy and 35 right now, and continued 35 through the day. I'm sorry, through the night, cloudy, a brief evening shower or two, followed by periods of rain late. Then tomorrow getting up to 42, occasional morning rain and drizzle. Otherwise, after a cloudy start, sunshine returns. And at the Tony Gwynn Palace in Northeast Pennsylvania, partly cloudy and 46. Today getting up to 59, clouds and sunshine with a couple of showers, areas of fog this morning. Wet weather can make for slow holiday travel. Okay. And tonight, 34 for a low, a shower in spots early this evening, otherwise partly cloudy and breezy. And in Limestone County, Texas, at the Liberty Rock RV Park and Campground, currently 47 and clear. Getting up to 60 degrees today, breezy this morning, otherwise cooler with plenty of sunshine, dry for holiday travel. And tonight, clear low of 41. At the Suncheon Palace in Korea, clear and 40 degrees right now, increasing cloudiness tonight, getting down to 35. And then tomorrow, a high of 57, a couple of morning showers, otherwise breezy, with clouds giving way to some sun. At the Gunma Palaces in Japan, 49 and clear right now, and getting down to 38 tonight, a passing evening shower or two, otherwise partly cloudy. Tomorrow, a high of 58, mostly cloudy. Guangzhou, Guangdong Province, 69 and clear, partly cloudy, getting down to 61 tonight. Tomorrow, high of 77, windy, with sun through high clouds. Right? And let's go. Oh, you know what? I'm not wearing my crown. Yes, my goodness. Okay, here we go. Yes. Thank you, Father, for reminding me of that. Okay, let's go to Father's Word here. And I am in chapter 6, which is on evil, sin, and the fall of man, fall of, or human fall. Okay. Father speaking here September 18th, 1976. Wait, that's a special date, isn't it? I believe that's the Madison Square Garden date. So this must be a quote from his Madison Square Garden speech. Okay, praise God. September 18th, 1976. Am I right? Yes, I'm pretty sure I'm right. 하나님은 가장 공적인 분이요. 사탄은 절대철미 자기 중심한 사적인 존재인 것입니다. So God is the most public. Pun is, if I say person, then you're going to get all mixed up. The three persons of the Trinity and all that. But no, 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 no. Don't go there, all right? So learn Korean. But pun is a reference to someone who is senior to you. Okay, pun. You don't say that a person senior to you is a saram. You say ibun or chobun. This person, that person. So he's referring to God and referring to God in an honorific way, okay, in a respectful way. So don't take it beyond that. Okay. Anyway, God is the most public. Why don't we just end it there? Okay. And the Satan is thoroughly self-centered and private. Is a self-centered and private existence. See, he doesn't say bun for Satan. He says 존재, existence. Right. Well, uh, okay. Um, so he's referring to God as Pun, but Satan as a 존재 or existence, and he's saying that Satan is a thoroughly 철두철미. 철두철미 means two. The two is the head, and me is the tail. So from head to tail, and 철 is absolute. I guess from the absolute head to the absolute tail, Satan is um, self-centered and private. 사적인 private existence. Not even a person. Definitely not a 분. Okay. Uh, um, public. Some people created confusion. I would say. Let me change my. Some people created confusion over the concept of public in Father's teachings, and they did this in the course of absconding with a great portion of Father's foundation, so especially his financial and well, yeah, his financial foundation. And they said that um, the monies they took were not public. And of course, when they said that, they were using the dictionary, in other words, the secular definition of public. In secular terms, of public funds, I guess you could say, are government funds or funds that belong to a nonprofit organization or so forth. And they say, oh, we're taking companies, so these are not public funds. But in Father's teaching, public has a different meaning. And this is another instance where Father, in his in the course of his effort to translate God's word into human language, which is, of course, an impossible task, but the best that can be done, he often gives new meanings to existing words, and this is one of those instances. And something that is public in Father's teaching is anything that is being used for or is a part of uh, God's purpose or God's providence. So public funds are funds that are intended for God's providence, intended to be used to further God's providence. In the divine principle, it talks about dual purposes, right? Public purpose and private purpose. And private purpose is not bad, right? But in fact, purpose is necessary. Um, we all need to eat. We all need, clothing, and uh, um, we all need to, have a roof over our head and so forth. So private purpose is necessary, and it is the responsibility of the group to make sure that everyone's private uh, purpose is accounted for and is met. But it is also the responsibility of each person to make sure that the public purpose is met. And Father often warns of the dangers of public money. Right? He says that public money is poison because if you use public money for a private purpose, then this is a serious crime in God's eyes, in the heavenly law. This is basically, well, it's financial malfeasance, and it's stealing from God, basically, stealing from God. And so he warns us again and again, be sure that we don't do that, that public money is poison. So, Father, there in his Madison Square Garden speech, I believe, saying that God is completely public. He's the most public. I'm not going to say the word after that. He's the most public, whereas Satan is from the absolute head to the absolute tail, just completely from beginning to end, self-centered and private. Okay, so Satan does not worry about the public purpose at all. All right, so praise God for the word that He has given us. Thank you, Father. All right, I want to um, now for one thing, you may have noticed already, I'm not doing the OSDP today. I'm going to have it broadcast on Saturday, even though today is Wednesday, and normally I would do the OSDP on Wednesday. But I'm doing this today on purpose because, for one thing, I'm traveling on Saturday, and it's going to be a mess. So I want to allow myself as much time in the morning as possible. So I'm not going to do a live broadcast on Saturday. Instead, I'm going to record an OSTP beforehand and have it broadcast on Saturday. Secondly, there's some important stuff that I need to talk about today, kind of adding on to what we discussed yesterday. Um, let's see here. Okay, no, uh, where did that thing go? Okay. Um, all right. Well, I had something here, and then I guess I got rid of it. But I wanted to talk about the series of phone calls between Xi Jinping and Trump, and then between Trump and uh, the Japanese Prime Minister. Hold on a second. Here we go. Okay. And there's a couple of things in there that the Chinese official media put out that really is very, very telling. And I think we need to cover it because it's incredibly important. So in the phone call, according to the Chinese media, that's not it. Wait a second. Hold on a second. Let me find the particular phrase that I'm looking for. Here we go. Okay. Okay. Let me bring this up so you can see it. According to Chinese state media, President Xi Jinping told Trump that the return of Taiwan to China was an important part of the post-war international order. So, at first I thought, okay, well, post-war international order, that's probably just a diplomatic phrase that doesn't mean a whole lot. But when you look at the next paragraph, you see that it's actually extremely important. She told the U.S. counterpart being what? U.S. President Donald J. Trump, all right? Come on, name the name, say the name in the call that Beijing and Washington should jointly safeguard the victorious outcomes of World War II, she said, Xinhua reported. This is important. This is important. Safeguard the victorious outcomes of World War II. Okay, so this makes it clear why Xi Jinping made that call. He's telling Trump, listen, you got this woman there in Tokyo, all right? And you know what she's trying to do? She's trying to change the outcome of World War II. Yeah, and that's not good. She's trying to pretend that Japan didn't lose Second World War, and she's first of all she's going to station missiles on an island that is just about 110 kilometers uh, see I have a map here. Here, this is Yonaguni Island. This is Yonaguni Island is Japanese territory, and Taiwan, of course, is we know to be a self-governing independent country, but China wants to say that it's actually part of their country, and they're going to take it over by force if necessary. They keep saying, and so she's going to be. She said she's going to station missiles there on Yonaguni, just about 70 miles off the coast of Taiwan. And also here you have a I'm sorry, Ishigaki Island here. So there's going to be military also on Ishigaki Island and also on Miyako Island, all relatively close to Taiwan. And here's Naha and Okinawa Island up here. And uh, so he's saying to President Trump that you have to stop her. You have to stop her. And I'm wondering if China is going to take the position that Japan stationing missiles on Yonaguni Island is somehow similar to the Soviet Union's attempt to deploy missiles on Cuba, on the island of Cuba, back in the early 1960s. Uh, of course, at that time, U.S. Spy plane discovered one day, they were taking pictures, and they discovered one day that the Soviet Union was building missile bases or missile silos or whatever, anyway, preparing to deploy missiles on Cuba. And this was during the Kennedy administration. And so President Kennedy actually sealed off Cuba. They uh, stationed U.S. Navy ships there in international waters to block Soviet ships carrying the missiles from approaching Cuba. And for a while, it looked as though there might actually be a nuclear war between the United States and the Soviet Union. But Kennedy held firm and forced the Soviet Union, at that time it was Khrushchev, to back down. And missiles were not stationed. Those missiles were not stationed on Cuba. Excuse me here. And I'm wondering if Xi Jinping is kind of saying, implying, perhaps even telling Trump that, listen, we can't have those missiles on Yonaguni Island. And we cannot allow Japan to pretend that they actually won the Second World War and that they're able to change the international order that was created as a result of Second World War. And Japan is doing this in a couple of ways. One thing is that they actually for a long time now they've been saying that they deserve to be on the UN Security Council as a permanent member. The current permanent members of the UN Security Council are the victors of World War II, U.S., U.S. and China, and then Russia. Now it used to be Soviet Union, and UK and France. Five members of the victors of World War II. Of course, originally it was not Beijing that represented the China seat; it was Taiwan that represented the China seat. But that changed in the early 1970s. I think during Carter or sometime around there, Carter administration maybe in the 1970s. So Japan is, or not just Japan, India also says, hey, you know what, we deserve to be a permanent member of the UN Security Council. And so there's some effort to change that. And also, Japan now is saying that, hey, you know what, if China uh, attacks Taiwan by force, then we're going to consider this. This is what Takaichi is saying. Prime Minister is saying we're going to consider this um, an existence threatening situation. In other words, a threat to Japan's existence. And because then, let's go back to the map. If this becomes communist China, then communist China now has military just 111 kilometers from a Japanese island. And so, and also, threatening these other islands and Okinawa. And, and obviously, China's next target would be to take these islands all the way up to Okinawa. Okinawa, by the way, stations quite a bit of Marines there on Okinawa Island. Um, and so it looks like China is raising or yeah, raising a new uh, international crisis, I guess you can say. And they're not talking about it too much publicly right now, but right now, just these code words sort of safeguard the victorious outcomes of World War II tells us that that is what they are talking about. They're saying, we got to, they're saying to Trump, Xi Jinping is saying to Trump, you and I have to keep Japan in its place. And if you don't do it, then we will have to do it, basically, kind of, right? But he's telling Trump to keep Japan in its place. And then what happened right after this? Well, what happened right after this is that Trump said to his secretary, hey, get Takaichi on the phone. And he talked to the Japanese prime minister. And we don't know very much about that uh, that conversation, except to say that Takaichi said that Trump briefed her on the conversation with Xi Jinping. So, what would Trump have told her? I wonder. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what, and I don't think we have information on that. Let's see here. Let me just check see here. Uh, Japan's Takaichi says she spoke with Trump at his request. That's a Bloomberg. They're not going to let us say that. See that. Okay. Takaichi cannot retract her statement, and Beijing knows that. Why it's okay. Japan PM highlights Trump bond after first talks since China clash. Okay, that doesn't tell us anything. Japanese PM Takaichi says Trump called her after he spoke with Chinese leader. That's PBS. All right. And Nikkei Asia, Trump and Takaichi speak by phone amid Japan-China spat. Okay. Japan Times. Maybe Japan Times will tell us something. Let's take a look at this. Uh, on Tuesday, held her first talks with U.S. President Donald Trump since her remarks. Da, 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 da. The call, which Takaichi said had been initiated by Trump, came just hours after the U.S. president spoke with Chinese leader Xi Jinping in talks that focused on Taiwan. Takaichi told, well, focused on Taiwan. This is the public uh, message that is being given by all the parties concerned. But actually, it's obvious that the focus was Japan. Okay. They don't want to say that. Takaichi told reporters that Trump had explained the current state of U.S. China relations, including details of his talks with Xi, the Japan leader said, without offering further details. So it's that further details that we want, but they're not giving it to us. We were able to confirm close coordination between Japan and the United States. President Trump stated that he and I are at, extremely close friends and that he would like me to call him anytime. Right. Appeared to be the latest part of a concerted effort by China to gather global support for its pushback against Takaichi's November 7th remarks by Trump in Parliament. Uh, all right, I suppose that's not untrue. Okay. Takaichi and the U.S. fought shoulder to shoulder against fascism. So China and the U.S. fought shoulder to shoulder against fascism and militarism. Given what is going on, it is even more important for us to jointly safeguard the victory of World War II, she said. So this is basically the same thing, safeguard the victory of World War II, which means what? Keep Japan in place, according to a readout of talks posted by the Chinese Foreign Ministry's website. Taiwan's return to China is an integral part of the post-war international order, she said. And okay, well, that's a little bit stretching it because, of course, at the end of World War II, Japan, until the end of World War II, Japan was occupying Taiwan, and uh, they returned it to China, but to nationalist China, to Chiang Kai-shek China, to what is today, you know, the government that is on Taiwan. And then that was in 1945. And then in 1949, Chiang Kai-shek lost the civil war against the communists, and so he uh, took his people and his military and people, and they all went to Taiwan. And so it's a little bit of a stretch for China to say that, well, our ownership of Taiwan is part of the post-war international order. It's actually yeah, it's that's a little bit of a stretch, but there's kind of a 4-year gap there, you see. The U.S. understands how important the Taiwan question is to China. The Chinese readout quoted Trump as saying, yes, I'm sure that's true. I'm sure Trump does understand how important Taiwan question is to China. Doesn't mean that the U.S. is going to capitulate or that U.S. is going to force Japan to capitulate. Okay. So there, Takaichi has said repeatedly that she's not going to cede, which says that her statement does not signal a change in government policy. Um, and here, Beijing on Monday took aim at Tokyo for its decision to deploy missiles to a self-defense force, not military. Okay, not military. There is no military in Japan. Okay? Self-defense force based on Okinawa Prefecture's Yonaguni Island, which sits just 110 kilometers from Taiwan. Japan's deployment of offensive weapons in Southwest Islands, um, in Southwest Islands. So Southwest Islands is actually the Japan calls it that too, Southwest Islands. But it's important. It's interesting that this is the foreign ministry, the Beijing foreign ministry, and the Beijing foreign ministry does not say its Southwest Islands. It does not make clear who owns the Southwest Islands. By the way, that includes Okinawa. From Okinawa on down, I think, is the Southwest Islands. I don't think the ones above that are Southwest Islands. Um, so already the Chinese foreign ministry is making the sovereignty over Okinawa and Miyako and Ishigaki and Yonaguni a little bit vague, right? We don't know who actually has ownership of the Southwest Islands. So we're not going to say. It could be France, it could be Germany, it could be Australia. We don't know. We don't know. It could be anyone. They're not saying exactly that Japan's deployment of offensive weapons in its Southwest Islands would be the proper way to say this, but they left out the ownership of the Southwest Islands. That's important to note, and I'm sure the Japanese have noted this. And it indicates that China ultimately wants those islands, Southwest Islands, close to China's Taiwan region, is a deliberate move that breeds regional tensions and stokes military confrontation, Foreign Ministry spokesman Mao Ning said. Given Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi's erroneous, see now, they don't say just prime minister, they say Japanese prime minister. So they make clear whose prime minister she is. Okay, in contrast to not making clear whose Southwest Islands these are. So you think I'm making something out of nothing? No, I'm not. In diplomacy, these things are important. People fight wars over a comma. All right. So leaving the it's out, leaving one word out, is very, very significant in diplomacy. And I hope the people in Washington see this, that China has eyes on those islands. So, erroneous remarks on Taiwan. This move is extremely dangerous and should put Japan's neighboring countries and the international community on high alert, she added. So, Koizumi, of course, rebutted this on Sunday. And of course, he did it um, while he was on Yonaguni. Here he says that the deployment of the missiles, which have a range of about 50 kilometers, is for defensive purposes, not for attacking other countries. Really? But they said mid-range missiles. 50? What the heck is that? That's not even on. Well, okay. So I guess they're going to shoot them at some maybe ships. Maybe that's it. I don't know. Okay, I thought that they were going to have a longer range than that. Uh, he so he wrapped up a visit to three of Japan's frontline southwestern islands. See, Japan's frontline southwestern islands. Japan Times is making sure that everybody knows whose southwestern islands those are. Has said claims that the deployment will heighten regional tensions are inaccurate. China has ramped up its military moves near Japan's southwestern islands, close to Taiwan, in recent years. On Tuesday, the defense ministry said it had scrambled fighter jets a day earlier after it detected an apparent Chinese drone flying between Yonaguni and Taiwan. Okay. All right. So I wanted to make sure that we got that into the universe today because this could be a kind of a Cuban Missile Crisis, depending on how far China wants to push this. Um, the difference from the 1960s, of course, is that I'm sure Japan is going to be deploying those missiles by air and not by sea. I would assume. Whereas the Soviet Union, of course, did not have the capability to deploy missiles by air back in the early 1960s. So China cannot block, Japanese ships from approaching Yonaguni, but China has warned that they're going to take some kind of decisive action, and they've started with reducing the number of tourists going to Japan, which actually Japan wanted anyway because they were having problem with tourists. The Chinese tourists were kind of acting up, and doing stuff they shouldn't do, and so I think Japan is kind of saying, well, yeah, all right, yeah, okay, we do miss the income, but still, on balance, I think this is a good thing. So they've reduced the number of tourists going to Japan, and also students studying in Japan, Chinese students studying in Japan have been warned that they might be the target of anti-Chinese actions or something like that. And so sort of discouraging Chinese students from going to Japan as well. Uh, but what is the next step that China may go in? What steps do they have in mind? And potentially some sort of a de facto blockade. Uh, I don't know. I don't know. Kind of like the blockade that President Kennedy put in place against the Soviet Union. I don't know. But we have to watch and see. But this could develop into something very, very serious. Very serious. And the fact that they're not making clear who has sovereignty over the Southwest Islands right now is, I think, a very telling situation. All right. So let's see what else is going on today. Let me get rid of some of these tabs here. Okay. All right. So on the Ukraine situation, um, let me share this with you. So it looks like U.S. and Ukraine have worked something out. But of course, now the problem is that Russia may not accept this. I think the possibility is high that they will not. So I think things are not really all that much closer to peace than they were. Uh, President Donald Trump said Tuesday his plan to end the war in Ukraine has been fine-tuned, and he's sending envoy Steve Witkoff to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin and Army Secretary Dan Driscoll to meet with Ukrainian officials. He suggested he could eventually meet with Putin and Ukrainian President Zelensky, but not until further progress has been made in the negotiations. And I think finally, the biggest sticking point is going to be territory. The as you know, the plan that President Putin put President Trump. I'm sorry, President Trump put out a week or so ago said that Ukraine was going to have to withdraw from territory that they currently control, and Ukraine was saying, no, 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 absolutely, that is not going to happen. Whereas Putin is saying, yes, 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 that must happen. And uh, I don't know that Putin really has a motivation to back down on this, whereas Zelensky does, because President Trump is saying, "Listen, this has got to stop." Trump is saying to Zelensky, "This has got to stop. One way or another, it's got to stop." And this is what I've been saying about President Trump having to make the difficult decision to basically uh, leave Ukraine to fend for itself, together with the Europeans, to whatever extent they can help fend for itself, while President Trump deals with other things such as China. And uh, and Zelensky realizes this. He realizes that uh, this kind of situation may be fast approaching. And so I'm sure he's making all the concessions that he thinks he can without going down in history as a traitor to his country. And that's very possible that is the only path open to him. And that's just I think the reality that uh, Biden left us with. President Trump has said over and over again, this war would not have happened in the first place if I had been in the White House. And yeah, I think that's true. So people will blame Trump if Ukraine goes down, but it's Biden that really needs to take responsibility. And I think historians 50 years from now will agree with that. But we don't have a time capsule, we don't have a time machine. We cannot jump 50 years. We have to deal with the realities as they currently exist. I will be briefed on all progress made, along with Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, and White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, Trump added in the social media posting. I look forward to hopefully meeting with President Zelensky and President Putin soon, but only when the deal to end this war is final or in its final stages. Trump spoke after Driscoll held talks, that's the Army Secretary, right? Late Monday and throughout Tuesday with Russian officials in Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates, to discuss the emerging proposal. The talks are going well, and we remain optimistic. Well, of course they're going to say that. Lieutenant Colonel Jeff Tolbert, spokesman for the Army Secretary, said in a statement, as the talks were taking place, Russia launched a wave of overnight attacks. So Russia is continuing to pressure Zelensky on Ukraine's capital, Kiev, with at least 7 people killed in strikes that hit city buildings and energy infrastructure. A Ukrainian attack on southern Russia killed 3 people and damaged homes, authorities said. Still, Trump expressed a measure of optimism that his administration's diplomatic efforts could soon lead to a breakthrough. Witkoff, a real estate developer turned diplomat, has been Trump's chief interlocutor with Putin, while Driscoll, who is close to Vance, has stepped up his involvement in the administration's peace push in recent days. Trump's plan for ending the nearly 4-year war emerged last week. It heavily favored Russia, prompting Zelensky to quickly engage with American negotiators. Yeah, and President Trump basically lit a fire under Zelensky and forced him to really deal more seriously. European leaders, fearing for their own future facing Russian aggression, but apparently sidelined by Trump in drawing up the proposal, scrambled to steer the negotiations toward accommodating their concerns. I think we're getting very close to a deal, and The Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov has said that, you know what, the Europeans have no credibility because they have broken promises in the past. And so that's why they're sidelined. They deserve to be sidelined. And I think he has a point. Um, Apparently sidelined, scrambled. Okay. I think we're getting very close to a deal. We'll find out, Trump said in an aside during an annual White House turkey pardon. He added, I thought that would have been an easier one, but I think we're making progress. Yeah, so he thought he could do it in 24 hours, but not. Macron said Tuesday peace efforts are gathering momentum and are clearly at a crucial juncture. He spoke after senior U.S. and Ukrainian officials met in Geneva on Sunday, and a virtual coalition of the willing meeting of Ukraine's European allies took place on Tuesday. Rubio took part in both gatherings. Negotiations are getting a new impetus, and we should seize the momentum, he said, during the video conference meeting of countries led by France and the UK that could help police any ceasefire with Russia. And then Keir Starmer said of the talks, I do think we are moving in a positive direction. And said, okay. And one of the Ukrainian delegates at Geneva said, cautioned that it was very premature to say that something is agreed upon. Right. And I think he's pointing to or implying that the territorial issue has not been touched hardly at all. So this guy, this Ukrainian delegate, spoke to the Associated Press. U.S. was aware that the strength of security guarantees for Ukraine would define the sustainability of the deal, and was part of making this deal real, and then for the part making this. But okay. He denied reports that the 28-point peace plan has now consists of 19. The document is going to continue to change. We can confirm that it was reduced to take out points not relating to Ukraine, to exclude duplicates, and for editing purposes, and that some points relating solely to relations between Russia and the US were excluded. All right. So, for example, Russia rejoining the G8, I guess that was probably excluded. Um, Stuff like that. And then Ursula von der Leyen said on Tuesday that the coalition of the willing meeting showed solid and encouraging progress. So they're all, say, oh, yeah, everything's going fine. Yeah, don't worry, we've got this under control. This is what they have to say. They're not going to say, oh, you know what? Oh man, this is hopeless. They're not going to say that, okay? Even if it is. So these words mean very, very little, almost nothing. Since pressure remains the only language Russia responds to, okay, the list of necessary steps to end the war can become workable. That's an interesting expression. He said he planned to discuss sensitive, outstanding issues with Trump. Territory, I'm sure, is one of those. Okay, Russian officials have been reserved in their comments on the peace plan. Yeah, because, uh, frankly, despite what Ursula von der Leyen says, I don't think Russia really is under all that much pressure. She likes to say that it is because, well, it's her job to say that. So I think I think this whole thing is going to fall through. Wait. Here, this is a Ukrainian resident, a 90-year-old resident of a damaged building in the told AP that absolutely everything in her department was shattered by the strike and glass rained down on her. She said she didn't believe in the peace plan now under discussion. And she may be giving us a realistic assessment there. No one will ever do anything about it, she said. Russian President Putin won't stop until he finishes us off. It's quite possible, quite possible. All right. And it's okay, so that's about it. Right? So I think trying to read between the lines and trying to look behind the curtain, uh, the territorial issue I think has not been touched at all, and I think that is sort of the elephant in the room that everybody's trying not to talk about, and I think that is what is going to um, cause this peace plan to eventually uh, fail. Unless or unless somehow Russia is able to take those lands militarily, at that point Ukraine might agree uh, to something at that point. But I don't see that happening either because Russia is not making all that much progress in its effort, its military effort on the ground. So we'll see. But Russia right now, they're being reserved in their comments. Well, that's because they're just sort of standing back and you know watching how things develop on the other side. But I don't think they have any plans to accept this peace plan as it is currently being formed. And so, what is President Trump going to do then? Right? What is President Trump going to do if eventually Ukraine says no? We will not give up that territory, come what may. What is President Trump going to do? And of course, it may affect his popularity among U.S. voters. Already, he's at the lowest point, or near the lowest point of his popularity since he began his second term. Right now, the Rasmussen has him at about 46, 47% support and about 51% opposed. So, and every day, of course, the midterm elections get closer and closer. We're now less than a year. So, if he's going to make a decision, he needs to make it quickly and can't get too close to the midterm elections politically, because then if that happens, then he'll just have to say, okay, uh, then we'll just leave it until after the elections, and then more people will die and so forth. Yeah, okay. And then the issue, of course, is that then China will be able to do what it wants. And China may be about to create, as I said, a new sort of a international crisis there around the Japanese deployment of missiles on Yonaguni. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Okay. All right. Let's see what else is going on. Let's go to the Epic Times and look at their headlines. Medicare slashes prices for 15 prescription drugs. Right. Okay. Not inclined to extend Obamacare subsidies. And so people who are on Obamacare, I guess, are going to see a huge rise in their rates. Is that right? This is what I've been hearing. Okay, they want us to donate. Not today, thank you. But acknowledge that some extension could be necessary to work through legislative matters. Okay, all right. So anyway, do your research on that if you are on Obamacare. And Space Force awards initial Golden Dome missile prototype contracts. Uh, they saw how well the Iron Dome of Israel worked, and they say, "Oh, we want one of those too." But Israel's a small country, okay? Israel's a small country, uh, and I don't know if the United States can cover its entire territory with a dome. And I'm sure Alaska and Hawaii, they don't want to be left out. So I'm not sure how this is going to work. It'll be interesting to see how this finally works out. FBI seeking to interview lawmakers in illegal orders video. Yeah, six members of Congress made this video telling military and police not to obey Trump's illegal orders. Although they, at least one of them has acknowledged that, as far as they know, no illegal orders have been issued. And so the members of the military and others are very angry that basically what they're doing is trying to uh, sow discontent and trying to sow division within the military. Of course, the Democrat Party is all about division, about creating division and creating a conflict. And now they're trying to undermine the chain of command. And so there's some trouble over that. Uh, brains have five major epochs in a lifetime, according to the study. Okay. Coffee's energy boost as an illusion. All right. Well, okay. But sometimes, illusions are good. Sometimes illusions work. Hey, whatever works, whatever works. Okay. All right. Let's see. Turkey got pardoned. All right. And all right. That's, okay. That's about it, I guess. Okay. Let's go to Breitbart, see what they're talking about. Dodging the United Nations, UN Ambassador Mike Waltz touts $1 billion saved in early reforms. We're just getting started. Uh, okay, but the UN is beyond reform. And see here. Okay. Breitbart and uses Lutnick shows the world how trade talks should work. Okay. Well, this is kind of important. Yeah, I think Hegseth wants the military to cut ties with scouts over gender ideology and DEI policies. Yeah. Man, yeah. It used to be that being an Eagle Scout, sort of the top rank, was a tremendous honor. Not just an honor, but it was gave a person tremendous respect because it was not at all easy to become an Eagle Scout. So Hegseth is reportedly proposing the military cut ties with Scouting America over its embrace of gender ideology and diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. So, and they've even changed their name, right? It used to be BSA, Boy Scouts of America, but they took out the boys, right? And they're accepting girls into to Boy Scouts, or what was Boy Scouts. So yeah, it's no longer it's the Boy Scouts that we knew as when we were children. It's something completely different, and I think, in fact, I strongly encourage parents to look for Christian alternatives. The group, which used to be called Boy Scouts of America before it went to gender neutral, has become an organization designed to attack boy-friendly spaces, Exit said in a draft memo to Congress first obtained by NPR. That's National Public Radio, a very leftist organization. The U.S. military has provided support to these scouts for more than 100 years, and assistance was formalized in 1937. However, in one memo, Hegseth allegedly says the organization, once endorsed by President Theodore Roosevelt, no longer supports the future of American boys. Hegseth's proposal calls for Pentagon to no longer provide medical and logistical aid to the National Jamboree and for the military to no longer allow scout troops to meet at military installations in the United States and abroad, according to the report. A source told the outlet the internal memos and documents had not been sent yet. A War Department official told the outlet they would not comment on leaked documents that we cannot authenticate and that may be pre-decisional. Scouting America said in a statement it is proud of its long affiliation with the military. Right. Sick. That's really sick. They really destroyed a truly great organization. I did not go very far in Boy Scouts, partly because the various uh, movements around that I was doing, and also partly because I happened to be under some, well, less than ideal leadership there. All he did was make us march. Oh, that was all he ever made us do. Yeah, it was not a very good troop. I mean, troops differ from one place to another. So, but anyway, overall, it was and a tremendously it was a tremendous organization, and what has become of it is truly sad. But I'm sure that Christian alternatives are coming up. I don't know what they are, but I'm sure that they're there, and I encourage parents to look into them. Let's see here, Global Times. Well, that's a Chinese communist paper. Only by, oh, I'm not sharing this with you. Let me share this with you. This is what the Chinese are saying, or the communists are saying. Only by adhering to pacifist constitution can Japan establish its foundation in the world. Mhm. People's Daily Zhongshen commentary. Hmm. Yeah, so they want Japan to adhere to its pacifist constitution. So they want to interpret Japan's constitution for it. Yes, isn't that nice? Okay. All right. Oh, this is actually I'm still doing that. Okay. So all right, let's see. Let's go to some of the Google stories. Okay, Witkoff in going to Russia. Okay, we know about that. All right. And so there's still some back and forth on that video. Uh, budget 2025 OBR forecast. Oh, this must be UK. Okay, that's you. And White House Press Secretary Carolyn Levitt's relative detained by ICE. Okay. And Taiwan president pledges $40 billion in additional defense budget, but I doubt that he's going to get this through the legislature. He's going to introduce a $40 billion supplementary defense budget to protect its democracy, Lai said. Said in a briefing Wednesday, Beijing had intensified its infiltration and influence campaign. But the opposition party, which, the Kuomintang party, which um, does not want to make things difficult with Beijing, wants to be friendly with Beijing, has the ability to block this. He vowed to build up Taiwan's self-defense capabilities in the face of growing threats from Beijing, aiming to achieve a high level of combat readiness by 2027, which is, when Beijing says it's going to be ready to invade. And let's see if the opposition party has said anything about this. At least not in this article, right? But the, the opposition party position is very important. So without their support, it's not going to go anywhere. Okay, all right. Let's see. We have just a few seconds left. Uh, U.S. Department of the Interior, more affordable national park access. Okay. Campbell's promises its soups are not made with 3D printed meat. Okay, thank you very much. That's good to know. Okay. All right. So Christmas is coming, and you know it's the most wonderful time of the year. Well, and they're building this atmosphere. Why? To celebrate Jesus? No, to get you to consume more, because that's what it's all about. And uh, it was not the American sort of retail stores that decided that December 25th should be the day that we celebrate Jesus' birth, but They did not decide that. That was decided, a couple of thousand years earlier, or maybe not quite 2000, but anyway, much earlier. But they're certainly taking advantage of the fact that December 25th is at the end of the year when they need to really push their sales in order to get out of the red. And that's why Black Friday is black. That's when they get out of the red and get into the black in their books. And so they're pressuring everyone to complete their all their Christmas shopping on Black Friday. And I don't know if you've ever noticed, but by the time you get into the first week of December, people are going to start saying, "Oh, if you still have some last minute shopping to do." Wait a second, what? We still have at least 2 weeks till Christmas, and we're still last minute. What are you talking about? No. But they're pressuring you to get those Christmas presents as quickly as possible. I posted on X yesterday that Christmas is the most socialist time of the year, not the most wonderful time of the year, but the most socialist time of the year, because children are taught that they can get all sorts of free stuff by being obedient to their authority figures. After I posted that, I thought about deleting that. I thought maybe this is well, but no. Listen, I need to balance out this crazy consumerist Christmas somehow. Anyway, so but one thing I do want to say is don't be lonely. Please don't be lonely. That's the one thing I want to encourage. If you are alone, if you don't have family or community, please find something, find community somewhere and this is a terrible time of year to be alone, that is for sure. So make sure that you are not alone. That's the one thing I would like to ask you to do. And if you see someone who is alone, invite them into your uh, family or into your community so that they are not alone. Okay. God bless Godspeed. May his kingdom come quickly. And I'm going to end the broadcast now.